At Lincoln High School, Lucas Gray was a student who didn't stand out much. He wasn't the star athlete or the class clown. In fact, most people barely noticed him at all. Every day, he walked through the halls with his head down, clutching his books tightly to his chest. His clothes were simple, jeans that had faded over time and a jacket patched up in places where it had torn. But those clothes weren't just old. They were part of his story. Lucas lived with his grandmother in a small house on the edge of town. The house wasn't fancy. It had peeling paint and creaky floorboards, but it was home. Ever since losing both of his parents in a car accident when he was younger, Lucas had grown used to living quietly. His grandmother did her best to take care of him, but money was tight. There wasn't enough for new clothes or anything extra. Still, Lucas never complained. He knew how hard his grandmother worked, and he appreciated every meal she cooked and every sweater she knitted for him during winter. On Monday mornings, Lucas always felt a little nervous about going back to school. It wasn't because of tests or homework. It was because of the way some kids looked at him. They didn't say anything outright cruel, but their stares said plenty. Sometimes they whispered behind their hands when he passed by. "Why does he wear the same thing every week?" one girl once asked loudly enough for him to hear. Lucas pretended not to notice, but deep inside it hurt. That particular Monday started like any other. Lucas woke up early, ate breakfast with his grandmother, and grabbed his backpack before heading out the door. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. As he walked along the familiar path to school, he tried to focus on the positives. At least today was science class, which was his favorite subject. Science gave him hope. When life felt too heavy, he could escape into thoughts of distant planets, futuristic technology, and endless possibilities. But as soon as Lucas stepped onto campus, things took a turn. Principal Hayes stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, scanning students as they arrived. She was known around school for being strict, some might even say unfair. Her rules about uniforms were legendary. Students had to follow them perfectly or else face consequences. And unfortunately for Lucas, his worn-out jacket didn't meet her standards. "Lucas Gray," Principal Hayes called out sharply as he approached the building. Her tone made his stomach drop. He stopped walking and turned toward her, trying to keep his expression neutral. "Come with me to my office." For a moment, Lucas considered arguing. After all, he hadn't done anything wrong, but he knew better than to talk back to someone like Principal Hayes. So he followed her silently, feeling the weight of curious glances from other students burning into his back. Once inside her office, Principal Hayes closed the door firmly and gestured for Lucas to sit down. The room smelled like coffee and old paper, and the walls were lined with framed certificates and awards. Sitting across from him, she fixed him with a stern look. "Lucas," she began, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "This isn't the first time we've spoken about your attire. You know our dress code policy exists for a reason. We expect students to present themselves appropriately." Lucas swallowed hard. "I understand, ma'am, but these are the only clothes I have right now." Principal Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Surely there's something you can do to improve your appearance. Borrow clothes from a friend perhaps, or ask your guardian to help." "My grandmother works 2 jobs just to keep us afloat," Lucas replied softly, his voice trembling slightly. "She does her best. These clothes may be old, but they're clean, and they fit fine." Principal Hayes sighed, shaking her head. "This isn't just about appearances, Lucas. It's about respect. For yourself, for this school, and for the learning environment we strive to create here. Wearing the same outfit repeatedly sends the wrong message." Lucas wanted to argue, further to explain how unfair it felt to judge someone based on what they wore, but he knew it wouldn't change her mind. Instead, he sat quietly, staring at the floor while she continued lecturing him. By the end of their meeting, she handed down a punishment, a 3-day suspension. As Lucas left the office, he couldn't shake the lump in his throat. Outside, students whispered and pointed, making snide comments under their breath. Some laughed, while others simply looked away. Lucas quickened his pace, eager to get off campus as fast as possible. The walk home felt longer than usual. Each step seemed heavier than the last. When Lucas finally reached his front door, he hesitated before going inside. How would his grandmother react? Would she be disappointed in him? Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. His grandmother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred a pot on the stove. Hearing him come in, she turned and smiled warmly. "You're home early. Did something happen?" Lucas hesitated again, then decided honesty was the best approach. "Principal Hayes suspended me for 3 days because of my clothes." His grandmother's smile faded, replaced by concern. "Oh, Lucas," she murmured, setting the spoon aside. "I'm so sorry, none of this is your fault." "It's okay," Lucas said quickly, though his voice cracked slightly. "It's not your fault either." She pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. For a few moments, Lucas allowed himself to feel safe, protected. But as soon as she released him, reality came rushing back. Tomorrow would bring another round of judgmental stares if he returned to school. And even worse, everyone would know why he'd been suspended. Later that evening, after finishing dinner and helping his grandmother clean up, Lucas retreated to his room. He flipped through one of his favorite science fiction novels, trying to distract himself. The stories always transported him to worlds where problems like this didn't exist, or at least, where heroes found ways to overcome them. Just as Lucas was about to turn off the light and go to bed, he heard a car pull up outside. Peering out the window, he saw headlights shining brightly against the dark street. A sleek black sedan idled in front of the house, its engine purring softly. Before Lucas could wonder who it belonged to, the driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out. The man wore a sharp suit and moved with purpose. He glanced around briefly before approaching the house. Lucas watched as he knocked on the front door, his heart pounding. Who could this stranger be? And why was he here? Lucas's heart raced as he heard the knock on the front door. Who could it be this late at night? His grandmother, already in her nightgown, shuffled toward the entrance with a puzzled expression. She opened the door cautiously, peering out into the darkness. Standing there was the man from the black sedan. He had sharp features and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look right through them. His suit was perfectly pressed, and he carried himself with an air of authority. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the man cleared his throat. "Good evening," he said in a calm but firm voice. "I'm looking for Lucas Gray. Is he here?" His grandmother glanced back at Lucas, who stood frozen near the staircase. Something about the man made her uneasy, but she nodded. "Yes, he's here. May I ask who you are?" The man pulled out a badge from his pocket and held it up briefly before tucking it away again. "My name is Agent Carter. I'm with a government agency, and I need to speak with Lucas urgently." A chill ran down Lucas's spine. A government agent? What could they possibly want with him? His grandmother stepped aside reluctantly, allowing the man to enter. The warmth of their cozy living room felt suddenly stifling as Agent Carter took a seat on the couch. "Lucas," he began, turning his attention directly to the boy. "Do you know why I'm here?" Lucas shook his head, clutching the strap of his backpack tightly. "No, I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?" Agent Carter leaned forward slightly, his tone softening just a fraction. "You haven't done anything wrong, Lucas. In fact, what we need from you is far more complicated than that. It involves your father." The mention of his father sent a jolt through Lucas. His dad had died years ago in a car accident, or so he'd always been told. But now, hearing this stranger bring him up like this, it felt like there was more to the story. "My father?" Lucas asked hesitantly. "What does he have to do with this?" Carter paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your father wasn't just an ordinary man, Lucas. Before his death, he worked on classified projects involving advanced technology, projects that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. We believe some of that knowledge may still reside within you." Lucas blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. Advanced technology? Classified projects? None of this sounded real. It sounded like something out of one of his science fiction novels, and yet the seriousness in Agent Carter's voice suggested otherwise. I don't remember anything like that, Lucas stammered. He never talked about work much, just normal stuff. That's understandable, Carter replied smoothly. These were highly sensitive matters. But sometimes when people are exposed to certain kinds of information or experiences, traces of it can linger, even genetically. That's why we're here. We need to find out if any of your father's work remains accessible through you. Lucas looked at his grandmother, whose face mirrored his confusion. She reached over and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. What exactly are you asking of my grandson? She demanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. For now, we simply need to talk, Carter said. If Lucas agrees, we'll take it step by step. But time is critical. Whatever your son discovered, others might also be searching for it, and they won't be as patient as we are. Others? The word hung heavily in the air. Lucas swallowed hard, feeling trapped between fear and curiosity. On one hand, the idea of being connected to something extraordinary thrilled him. On the other hand, the thought of strangers prying into his life terrified him. Before Lucas could respond, Carter handed him a small white card. Printed neatly on it was a phone number and a single line of text, for matters beyond comprehension. If you decide to cooperate, Carter explained, standing up, call this number tomorrow morning. If not, he let the sentence trail off ominously. Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. With that, he turned and walked out the door, leaving Lucas and his grandmother alone in stunned silence. The sound of the car engine fading into the distance broke the spell. Later that night, Lucas lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep eluded him completely. His mind buzzed with questions and possibilities. Could his father really have been involved in secret government projects? Was it possible that some part of that legacy lived on inside him? And most importantly, what would happen if he agreed to help? He picked up the card again, examining it under the dim light of his bedside lamp. There was no logo, no official seal, just those cryptic words, for matters beyond comprehension. The phrase sent shivers down his spine. It sounded both thrilling and terrifying all at once. Downstairs, his grandmother sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea and staring blankly at the wall. She couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change forever. Her thoughts drifted back to her son, the man who had raised Lucas, and wondered how much of his life had truly been hidden from them. By morning, neither of them had slept well. As sunlight streamed through the windows, Lucas made a decision. Whatever secrets lay buried in his past, he needed answers. He owed it to himself and to his father to find out the truth. The next morning, Lucas woke up feeling like he hadn't slept at all. His mind was tangled with thoughts about the mysterious card and Agent Carter's visit. He stared at the ceiling for a long time before finally getting out of bed. The house was quiet. His grandmother had already left for her early shift at the diner. On the kitchen table, she'd left him a note. Whatever you decide, I trust you. Be safe. Lucas sighed, folding the note carefully and putting it in his pocket. He knew she was trying to be supportive, but the weight of the decision still rested heavily on his shoulders. After eating a quick breakfast, he grabbed his backpack and headed toward school. Even though he'd been suspended, he figured showing up might make things seem less suspicious if anyone noticed. As Lucas walked along the familiar route to Lincoln High, he couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. The streets were unusually quiet, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath. When he turned the corner onto the main road leading to the school, his heart nearly stopped. An armored convoy stretched across the street in front of Lincoln High. Trucks, jeeps, and military vehicles lined both sides of the road, their engines idling loudly. Soldiers dressed in tactical gear moved swiftly, forming a perimeter around the school. Some carried rifles slung over their shoulders, while others spoke urgently into radios. Parents and students gathered nearby, pointing and whispering in confusion. "What's going on?" one student asked aloud, but no one had answers. Lucas froze, gripping his backpack straps tightly. This wasn't normal. Not even close. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of what this could mean. Then, just as he began to back away slowly, hoping to slip unnoticed into the crowd, a soldier spotted him. "There he is," the soldier shouted, pointing directly at Lucas. Before Lucas could react, several soldiers moved toward him, surrounding him in seconds. Panic bubbled inside him as everyone turned to stare. Whispers erupted among the onlookers. "It's Lucas." "Gray!" someone exclaimed. "Why are they here for him?" Another voice added. Principal Hayes emerged from the chaos, her face pale with shock. She pushed through the crowd, demanding answers. "What is the meaning of this? You can't just storm onto school property like this." Agent Carter stepped forward, calm and composed despite the commotion. "Principal Hayes," he said, nodding politely. "We need to speak with Lucas Gray immediately." Principal Hayes crossed her arms, her expression shifting between anger and disbelief. "You can't take one of my students without explanation. What authority do you have?" Carter didn't answer her directly. Instead, he turned to Lucas, who stood frozen amidst the soldiers. "Lucas, we've come to bring you in. It's time." Lucas swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Bring me in. Where?" "That's not important right now," Carter replied. "What matters is that you come willingly. Trust me when I say this is for your own protection and for the safety of those around you." Protection? Safety? The words sounded hollow in Lucas's ears. He glanced around at the sea of faces watching him, some curious, some fearful, and some outright hostile. He felt exposed, like a deer caught in headlights. "Wait!" Principal Hayes interjected, stepping between Lucas and the soldiers. "You can't just take him without telling us why. He's a minor. His guardians need to be informed. We'll handle all necessary protocols," Carter assured her, his tone clipped. "But this is a matter of national security. Now please step aside." Reluctantly, Principal Hayes did as she was told, though her frustration was evident. As the soldiers led Lucas toward one of the trucks, he caught sight of Emily, a quiet girl from his science class. She stood apart from the crowd, her wide eyes locked on him. For a brief moment, their gazes met, and Lucas saw something unexpected in her expression: understanding. It was as if she somehow knew this wasn't random, that there was more to him than anyone realized. Once inside the truck, Lucas sat stiffly on a metal bench flanked by two soldiers. The vehicle rumbled to life, pulling away from the school. Through the small window, he watched as the scene grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Inside the truck, Carter took a seat across from Lucas. He looked calm, almost casual, despite the gravity of the situation. "I know this must feel overwhelming," he said, leaning forward slightly. "But I promise you we're doing everything we can to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "From people who might want to exploit what you carry inside you," Carter explained. "Your father's work, it wasn't just groundbreaking, it was dangerous. And now that word has gotten out, others will stop at nothing to get their hands on it." Lucas shook, his head struggling to process everything. "But how do you even know I have anything? I don't remember anything special." Carter smiled faintly. "Sometimes knowledge isn't stored in memories. Sometimes it's woven into our very DNA. We'll help you uncover it, piece by piece." The rest of the ride passed in silence. Lucas stared out the window, watching as the city gave way to open countryside. They drove for hours, eventually arriving at a remote facility surrounded by tall fences topped with barbed wire. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and surveillance cameras tracked every movement. When the truck came to a stop, Lucas hesitated before stepping out. The air smelled different here, dry and metallic, with a faint tang of electricity. As he followed Carter and the soldiers into the building, he couldn't help but feel like he was walking into another world entirely, one where nothing would ever be the same again. Once inside the facility, Lucas was led down a long, sterile hallway. The walls were painted a pale gray and bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Every step echoed loudly against the tiled floor. Soldiers walked briskly past them, their boots clicking in perfect rhythm. Lucas felt like he'd stepped into a movie. Except this wasn't fiction anymore. Agent Carter stayed by his side, occasionally glancing at him as if to gauge his reaction. "This place may seem intimidating," Carter said finally, breaking the silence. "But it's designed for safety. You'll be protected here." Lucas didn't respond. His mind was racing too fast to form words. Protected from what? Who exactly was after him? And why did everyone keep talking about his father's work as though it was some kind of secret weapon? They stopped in front of a heavy metal door that slid open automatically with a soft hiss. Inside was a large room filled with computers, monitors, and strange-looking machines Lucas had never seen before. Scientists in white lab coats moved around the room, typing on keyboards or adjusting equipment. In the center of it all stood a man in a dark suit, older than Carter, with sharp features and an air of authority. "This is Director Monroe," Carter introduced. "He oversees operations related to your father's projects." Director Monroe stepped forward, extending his hand. Lucas hesitated before shaking it. The man's grip was firm, almost too firm, and his eyes studied Lucas intently. "Welcome, Lucas," Monroe said, his voice calm but commanding. "We've waited a long time for this moment." "For what moment?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling slightly. Monroe exchanged a glance with Carter before answering. "For someone who might hold the key to unlocking your father's greatest discovery. We believe that knowledge, or pieces of it, may still reside within you." Lucas shook his head, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't remember anything about my dad's work. I barely even remember him." "That's understandable," Monroe replied. "Your memories aren't necessarily gone, they're just buried. Our job is to help you access them." Before Lucas could ask more questions, Monroe gestured toward one of the machines in the room. It looked like a chair surrounded by wires and sensors, with a helmet attached to the top. "This device will allow us to scan your brain activity. It's non-invasive, but it will require your full cooperation." Lucas stared at the machine, unease creeping up his spine. He thought about running, about refusing to participate. But where would he go? These people had brought him here for a reason, and they clearly weren't going to let him leave anytime soon. "Do I have a choice?" Lucas asked quietly. "You always have a choice," Carter interjected. "But choosing not to cooperate could put yourself, and others, at risk. There are people out there who won't hesitate to use force to get what they want." The weight of those words settled over Lucas like a heavy blanket. Slowly he nodded. "Okay. I'll do it." Over the next few hours, Lucas underwent a series of tests. First, he sat in the chair while scientists placed the helmet on his head. Wires connected to the device monitored his brain activity as images flashed across a screen in front of him. Some of the pictures were random. A cat, a car, a sunset. But others seemed strangely familiar, though Lucas couldn't explain why. One image in particular caught his attention. A blueprint of a circular object covered in symbols he didn't recognize. As he stared at it, a sharp pain shot through his temples. "What was that?" Lucas gasped, clutching his head. "It's normal," one of the scientists assured him. "Your brain is processing information it hasn't accessed in years." After the scanning session, Lucas was taken to another part of the facility. Here, the rooms were smaller and less crowded, almost cozy compared to the high-tech lab. A young woman introduced herself as Dr. Harper. She had warm brown eyes and a gentle smile that made Lucas feel slightly more at ease. "I'm here to guide you through the next phase," she explained. "Think of me as your mentor. Together, we'll explore the fragments of your father's work that remain locked inside you." Dr. Harper handed him a notebook and pen. "Start by writing down anything unusual you've noticed about yourself. Dreams, flashes of memory, even feelings you can't quite explain. Anything helps." Lucas flipped through the blank pages, unsure where to begin. But as he thought back on his life, certain moments stood out, like the time he fixed a broken clock without ever learning how clocks worked, or the dreams he sometimes had of stars moving in patterns he couldn't understand. Slowly, he began jotting things down. As the day wore on, Lucas started to feel a strange mix of fear and excitement. Fear because he didn't know what these people expected to find, or what they might do once they found it. Excitement because deep down he wanted answers. He wanted to know why his father's work mattered so much, and whether any part of it truly lived on inside him. By evening, exhaustion set in. Lucas was shown to a small bedroom with plain furniture and a single window overlooking the desert landscape. For the first time since arriving, he felt a flicker of calm. Maybe this place wasn't so bad after all. Maybe it really was about helping him uncover something extraordinary. Just as he was drifting off to sleep, a thought crossed his mind. What if his father hadn't been an ordinary man at all? What if he'd been a hero, or something even greater? The days that followed were a whirlwind for Lucas. Each morning began with breakfast in the facility's cafeteria, a bland but edible meal served on trays. And then he was escorted back to the testing room. The scientists and Dr. Harper worked tirelessly, guiding him through exercises designed to unlock fragments of his father's knowledge. Sometimes it felt like solving puzzles. Other times it felt like piecing together memories from a dream he couldn't quite recall. One afternoon, as Lucas sat in the chair once again, the helmet secured over his head, something unusual happened. The screen in front of him displayed another image of the circular object, this time closer up, its strange symbols glowing faintly. As Lucas stared at it, the sharp pain returned, but this time it was accompanied by flashes of light and sound. He saw glimpses of his father working late at night, surrounded by papers and blueprints. His dad looked tired but determined, muttering calculations under his breath. Then the vision shifted, showing the same circular object spinning rapidly, emitting beams of energy that seemed to bend reality itself. Lucas gasped, pulling off the helmet and clutching his chest. What is that thing?" he stammered. Dr. Harper leaned forward, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "That's what we're trying to figure out, Lucas. It appears to be some kind of device, possibly capable of manipulating space or time." "Manipulating space or time," Lucas repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "How is that even possible?" "We don't know yet," she admitted. "But your father spent years developing it, and now we believe you. Hold the key to understanding how it works." Lucas shook his head, overwhelmed. "I'm just a kid. How can I possibly understand something like that?" "You're more than just a kid," Dr. Harper said firmly. "You carry pieces of your father's brilliance inside you. We'll help you uncover them, step by step." As the tests continued, Lucas began to notice changes within himself. Small things at first, like being able to solve math problems faster than before, or recalling details from books he'd read years ago. But soon, stranger abilities emerged. One evening, while practicing meditation techniques suggested by Dr. Harper, Lucas found himself focusing on a pen lying on the table. To his astonishment, the pen twitched slightly, as if responding to his thoughts. He blinked, unsure if he'd imagined it. When he tried again, the pen moved again, this time rolling across the surface toward him. Shocked, Lucas called for Dr. Harper, who arrived moments later. "What did you do?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. I don't know," Lucas admitted. "I just thought about moving the pen and it happened." Dr. Harper nodded slowly, jotting notes onto her clipboard. "It seems your connection to your father's work is deeper than we realized. These abilities might be linked to whatever he discovered." Though part of Lucas was thrilled by these developments, another part worried. What if he couldn't control these powers? What if they grew stronger and more dangerous than anyone anticipated? Meanwhile, tensions outside the facility were rising. News of the armored convoy arriving at Lincoln High had spread quickly, sparking rumors across town. Some claimed the government was hiding aliens. Others believed it was part of a secret military experiment. Parents demanded answers, and local authorities pressured officials to investigate further. Back home, Lucas's grandmother struggled to keep up appearances. She told neighbors her grandson had gone to stay with relatives for a while, but the questions kept coming. Late at night, she sat alone in the kitchen staring at the card Agent Carter had given Lucas. Though she trusted her grandson, She couldn't shake the feeling that he was caught up in something far beyond her understanding. M.O. School. Students whispered endlessly about Lucas's sudden disappearance. Emily, the quiet girl from his science class, paid close attention to every detail. Unlike most of her classmates, she didn't dismiss the situation as gossip. Instead, she scoured online forums and news articles, searching for clues. Something about Lucas's story resonated with her, a sense that he wasn't just an ordinary boy suspended over old clothes. Inside the facility, Lucas faced a new challenge: training. Director Monroe explained that unlocking his potential required discipline, not just mental but physical as well. Every day, he underwent rigorous exercises designed to strengthen both his body and mind. At first, Lucas struggled, unused to such intense activity. But gradually he grew stronger, faster, and more focused. During one session, Carter approached him after observing his progress. "You've come a long way, Lucas," he said, handing him a folder. "This contains information about your father's project. I think it's time you learned more." Lucas opened the folder cautiously, scanning the pages filled with technical diagrams and notes written in his father's handwriting. One phrase stood out: Project Horizon. Beneath it was a description of the circular object, the device Lucas had seen in his visions. "This is what my dad was working on?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling. Carter nodded. "Your father believed Project Horizon could revolutionize humanity's understanding of the universe, but it also came with risks powerful enough to attract dangerous attention." Lucas closed the folder, his mind racing. "So, what happens now?" "That depends on you," Carter replied. "We can continue unlocking your potential, or we can stop here. But stopping means leaving everything unresolved, including the threat posed by those who seek to misuse your father's work." Lucas thought about his grandmother waiting at home, unaware of everything he'd discovered. He thought about Emily, watching quietly from afar. And he thought about his father, whose legacy lived on through him. Slowly, he made his decision. "I want to finish what my dad started," he said firmly. "But I need to make sure my family stays safe." Carter smiled faintly. "We'll protect them, Lucas. You have my word." By the end of the week, Lucas felt like a different person. The shy, uncertain boy who'd been suspended for wearing old clothes was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, sharper, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. Though fear still lingered in the corners of his mind, it no longer controlled him. Late one night, as Lucas gazed out the window at the endless desert sky, he allowed himself to dream. Maybe, just maybe, he really was destined for something extraordinary. Weeks turned into months as Lucas settled into his new life at the facility. The days were long and demanding, but he no longer felt like an outsider looking in. He had become part of something bigger, something that stretched far beyond the walls of Lincoln High School or the small house he shared with his grandmother. Each test, each training session, brought him closer to understanding the full scope of his father's work and his own potential. Dr. Harper remained a constant presence, guiding him through the process with patience and encouragement. She taught him how to harness his abilities, helping him control the strange powers that had begun to surface. At first, moving objects with his mind seemed impossible, but with practice, it became almost natural. Other skills followed. Heightened senses, rapid problem-solving, and even brief glimpses of future events. It was overwhelming at times, but Lucas never lost sight of why he was there: to honor his father's legacy and protect the world from those who might misuse Project Horizon. Director Monroe and Agent Carter kept their promise to safeguard Lucas's family. His grandmother received regular updates, though they were vague enough to keep her safe from prying eyes. She wrote letters filled with love and reassurance, reminding Lucas of the values she'd instilled in him: kindness, courage, and responsibility. Reading those letters gave him strength on the hardest days. Back in town, rumors about Lucas continued to swirl. Some people believed he'd been taken by aliens. Others thought he'd joined some secret government program. Emily, however, refused to accept any explanation that didn't involve science fiction. Late at night, she pored over old books and articles, piecing together theories about advanced technology and hidden knowledge. Though she didn't know the truth, she felt certain Lucas was destined for greatness. One evening, Lucas stood in the main lab, staring at the circular object now mounted on a pedestal in the center of the room. Scientists buzzed around it, running diagnostics and analyzing data. To Lucas, it looked both beautiful and terrifying, a relic of his father's genius that held untold power. "This is it," Director Monroe said, joining him. "Project Horizon. Your father's greatest achievement, and now yours." Lucas swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "What does it do?" Monroe hesitated before answering. "In simple terms, it allows us to manipulate dimensions. Space, time, energy, all interconnected. With this device, we could solve global crises, explore distant galaxies, or prevent disasters before they happen. But what if someone uses it for harm?" Lucas asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his chest. "That's why you're here," Monroe replied. "You'll decide how it's used, or whether it's used at all." The weight of that responsibility pressed down on Lucas, but he nodded. He knew deep down that his father wouldn't have created something so powerful without considering the risks, and now it was up to Lucas to ensure its purpose aligned with peace and progress, not destruction. The final phase of Lucas's training involved testing the device itself. Under strict supervision, he placed his hands on the pedestal, focusing all his energy on the glowing symbols etched into its surface. As he concentrated, the room seemed to hum with energy. The air shimmered, and for a fleeting moment, Lucas saw visions of other worlds, places where humanity thrived among the stars. When the experiment ended, everyone in the lab erupted into applause. Dr. Harper hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, Lucas. You truly did it." But Lucas knew the journey wasn't over. Unlocking the device's potential was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, people who would try to take it from him, governments who would demand its secrets, and questions about whether humanity was ready for such power. As he left the lab that night, Lucas stepped outside into the cool desert air. Above him, the sky stretched endlessly, dotted with countless stars. For the first time in his life, he felt connected to something vast and infinite. Whatever happened next, he vowed to use his gifts wisely, not just for himself, but for everyone. Far away in her quiet bedroom, Emily gazed out her window at the same starry sky. She didn't know exactly where Lucas was or what he was doing, but she believed in him. Somewhere out there, she thought, he was becoming the hero humanity needed, even if no one realized it yet.